the podcast. My name is Zawa Sabrina Akbareza.
My name is Anastasia Putri Olivia.
My name is Nuraini Novia Dara. Hi everyone, welcome back to the podcast. I am really glad you guys could join us again today. Okay, so I am Aini.
And I am Zahwa. So today we are going to talk about something that every single college student needs to hear. Our episode title today is English for uni student. Just a flex or a survival skill. Is English for uni student actually important? Is it just a free pad?
Right, exactly. To really dig into it, we have invited someone who has actually spent time looking into the data and research on this. Let us welcome our classmate Anastasia. Hey, how is it going?
Hey Aini, hey Zahwa. I'm going great, thank you for having me. I am super excited to talk about this because many students still king of understatement how big of a deal English actually is for our future.
Okay, let us just dive in. Anastasia, a lot of students say stuff like, we live in Indonesia or places or Indonesia better. What is your take on that?
I get why people think that why. It is honestly a trap. If you look at the word English is basically the gatekeeper to knowledge. I remember reading this paper by Tariq and Siregar in 2020 published in Journal Pengabdian Masyarakat, and they point that out that most groundbreaking research paper, update textbooks, and international journal are only available in English.
Basically, if we only rely on Indonesian sources or references for assessment or our thesis end up being pretty limited, right?
Exactly, that is the point. The research show that students who can read English get better access the global database. It also helps you think critically because you are not just reading the same local stuff over and over, you are actually seeing what the rest of the academic world is doing.
That makes sense for coursework, but what about after graduation? Is a GPA or being good at your major and land a job?
Not really, not anymore. Technical skills matter. English is what actually sells you. There is a research 2025 study for journal Pedagogia by Rama and Setiawan that covers actually this. They found that English speaking skills directly affect how ready you are to enter the world.
How does that actually play out when you are job hunting?
Big multinational companies use English as their first screening filter from candidates. The data in that study showed that students who speak English well are way more confident during interview. It gives you an edge, and it's not just about getting hired, it is about climbing the career ladder faster later on too.
No wonder every job posting this they text for a certain TOEFL score. It all connects. What about the day of things we are staged constantly?
And that is into another phase of research from 2025 by Al Ghafri and Alhan Afid. They found that university students basically depend on English to keep up with the technology and global communication. Think about it, coding language, AI tools, software documentation platform like LinkedIn, it is all in English. You really cannot separate literacy from English anymore.
Basically, if you do not know English, you are not just missing out on a language, you are getting left behind on the teach sheet too.
I mean, like our title says, is not just a flex or nice to have anymore English for uni students, if a survival skill for your generation.
That was of a wake-up call. So thought learning English is really an investment for our grades on career and how we handle tech.
Thanks to Anastasia for coming on and sharing all this research-based stuff with us today. It was seriously eye-opening.
Anytime, guys. Thanks for having me. And yeah, let us keep practicing our English.
Thanks to everyone watching, including our lecturer. See you in the topic. Bye!
Hi guys! Welcome back to the channel. I am Anastasia.
And I am Zahwa. Super excited for today episode because we are tackling an issue that always gets people talking and honestly, sometimes shooting around campus.
For real, it is a hot debate, but we aren't just talking, and so avoid today. We have a special guest in the studio. Let's welcome your fellow students, Aini. How is everything, Aini?
Hi Anastasia, hey Zahwa. I am doing great. Thanks for having me on the church today, guys.
Glad you're here. So let's just throw the elephant in the room neck and there. So our uni completely ban smoking on campus grounds, or should we actually accommodate it?
Yeah, it is a massive dilemma. Half the student body thinks it's a basic personal right, while the other half is the judge's sake of inhaling secondhand smoke. We want to unpack both sides without taking chop shots. Let's dive in.
Alright, Aini, let's start with you. What your honest take on that? Should lighting up the offering on campus or not?
Honestly, I think the sweet spot is somewhere in the middle. Look, I am definitely not saying people should just smoke wherever they want. Nobody want a face full of smoke on their way to a morning lecture. But we also have to face reality. You can't just expect people to quit cold turkey overnight. If you look at a study from the International Journal of Environmental Research and Public Health, a ton of uni students actually use smoking as a quick coping mechanism just to survive academic burnout and stress. So, practically speaking, the uni should build designated smoke zones, give them a specific corner so they don't mix with onion and elsewhere.
That makes sense. So instead of a massive, aggressive ban that makes judge backfire, you are looking at the realistic conformance with clear zoning.
Exactly. It all boils down to mutual respect. Rokok, the smokers need to stop lighting up near class buildings, and non-smokers need to understand that teaching and education is a slow process.
I got the word live and let live vibe I need. But playing devil advocate here, a lot of students would strongly disagree. If you check out the Journal of American College Health, smoke-free campuses drastically cut down secondhand smoke risks and actually keep people safer. So, our university put our health is like think alone student with severe asthma or economic breathing issue. They that seek out of for that.
I got back Zahwa up on this. Plus, from an environmental psychology perspective, what we say every day spends our habit. If freshmen arrive and see seniors smoking everywhere, it normalizes it. It makes them think, oh, I guess this is just what college students do, and then they try it. That's a pretty bad look for an educational innovation to create, don't you think?
No, you both make totally valid points. Smoking is harmful and smokers need to take ownership of that. But that's exactly why isolated smoking zones work better. A comparative study in tobacco prevention and causation actually found that when you give people a designated spot, compliant crosscuts, the campus stay way cleaner compared to a total ban because when you ban it completely, people don't stop, they just hid in toilets, tile walls, or behind buses. If we contain it in specific out of the way zones, we can actually control the litter and the smoke drive.
Touch. That's a pretty short counterpoint. Let's jump back to what you mentioned about stress during exams. Third, does smoking actually help students deal with that pressure? Or is it just a placebo?
It's a total illusion. It may take the idea of 4 minutes, but medical data proves that nicotine actually jacks up your baseline anxiety over time. Honestly, there are better ways to clear your head like hitting the gym, blasting some music, or just grabbing coffee and venting to friends.
Work, college is stressful, but a cigarette is done a medical fix. If students are drawing in work, the unit should probably put more funding into accessibility, some selling service or wellness space inside.
Louder for the people in the back. Alright, let's play a quick game. Aini, if you were named university rector for 24 hours, what's your ultimate policy change?
Easy, I did build strict, well-ventilated smoking zones completely away from the academic buildings. At the same time, I make anti-smoking health campaign mandatory for everyone to slowly pass people toward cutting back.
Solid. Now, if I had the Richter's case, I did enforce it a 2000% smoke-free campus. But I won't just finish people. I did invest healthy thing in this free medical support system to help students who genuinely want to quit. Education and support over penalties any day.
Honestly, love both of you idiots. One handles the immediate really on the ground, and the other aims for long-term health.
Well, before sing off, I need give us on final thoughts to wrap this all up.
Just that designated zones are the most mature stepping stone solution we have right now. It protects non-smokers' lungs while not treating smokers like cats. It's all about following the rules and respecting shared space.
Thanks, Aini. To shun it up, smoke-free campus and definitely become kill public health. But dealing with human, babies, rigor, and bloodshed, step by step study.
Today, chat proved that even when we look at things differently, we all want a healthy, comfortable campus.
Big thanks to our factor and everyone listening. Stay safe, take care of lungs, and catch you in the next one. Bye!
Hi guys, what's up? Welcome back to our channel. I am Aini, and yeah, we are coming to you live from the Faculty of Communication and Language at UBSI.
And I am Anastasia, stoked to be co-hosting with ID today. So, we are diving into something that honestly been a headache for everyone lately, the fuel price hike.
we wanna look at this from a real academic angle. That's why we got Zahwa here with us today. Hi Zahwa.
Hi guys, thanks for having me. And yeah, but well, full thing. Super messy, but definitely worth talking about.
Right, like immediately when the government bumps up the price, everyone just freaks out about inflation. But like from an economist standpoint, what's actually happening behind the scenes with production and stage cash?
So, okay, I was actually reading this paper in Sugianto. It's in the Journal of Indonesia Economy and Business, and he basically talk about how is a double-edged sword. Like on one side, the government does in a patch of the side budget can cut down subsidies and so.
Okay, makes sense for the government's wallet, but what about the business? Does it just break the whole production system?
Well, yeah, at first it does. The paper say costs to skyrocket because full turn everything right. But the cool thing he mentioned is the concept called mere full subsidies. Basically, it forgets industries to start looking at cleaner energy alternatives too. So, if they balance it right, it actually keeps long-term inflation from going totally crazy.
Oh, that's weird. But let's bring that down to real life, like moving goods around logistics. Informatics is literally the backbone of everything. How does a massive full south mess up well supply chain?
Oh, for that, you gotta check out Christopher and Peck research. I think it's in the International Journal of Logistics. Their whole point is about building the resilient supply chain and how sudden energy shock make logistic networks super vulnerable.
Why? Vulnerable how? Like is that why my mom is complaining about grocery price?
Exactly. When gas grease up shaping causes exploit society. And his journal point on that one local supply chains just don't have the big abstract or essentiality to absorb that extra cost. So what do the transport guys do? They just take 100% of that cost onto us, the consumer. That's why food price jump even when me farmers didn't change a thing.
Man, this stuff. So we're basically the ones taking the hits. And speaking of us, what about student and low-income families? How does this fit into our daily lives?
Um, there's this other study by Setiawan and Handoko in the Journal of Developing Area. They did some real empirical data stuff showing that full hacks literally shrink the spending money, the disposable income of poor households and well college students.
Tell me about it. We live on certain monthly allowances. How do students even manage according to that study?
It's actually pretty sad. The data shows that when Swiss forest and campus food get pricey, students start making these bad trade-offs. Like, they stop buying recruited textbooks, they out the internet data needed for research, or they literally skip healthy meals just to save gas money. So yeah, that financial stress directly messes with their grades and well-being.
Wow, that's heavy. So a policy change at the top basically forces a student to choose between a textbook or a bus ride to class. That's crazy.
Yeah, it really shows how connected everything is. like Sugianto cite the fake students' revenue, Christopher and Peg Sorenque supply camps are weak, and Setiawan basically proved that student subsidies are a must.
Spot on. You can just stop a priest hide without a safety net.
100%. Anyway, thanks Tanzahwa for breaking this down with actual facts today.
And thanks to everyone watching. Stay critical, look sharp in your UBSI alma mater jacket, and chat you guys in the next one. Bye! See you!